Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, and furthermore, welcome back to yet another exciting Dungeons and Dragons miniature review. Tonight, we are taking a look at the Dungeons and Dragons Icons of the Realms 50th Anniversary Classic Red Dragon pre-painted figure, and you can see the miniature there in the window here. Some nice vintage retro art of like a wizard with a torch. He's in some kind of dungeon, and the box is done up in a way to make it look like, you know, maybe the wizard's coming across this terrifying reptilian beast. 50th anniversary, ages 14 plus. See a nice glamour shot of the classic red dragon there. And it looks pretty nice. Turning it around, you can see that nice retro illustration. The D&D Icons of the Realms 50th Anniversary Classic Red Dragon is modeled after its first edition likeness from the original Monster Manual cover of the first edition basic boxed set. This dragon is a true callback to the early years of D&D and is ready to terrorize your table. And I just think that there's something so nostalgic about this old artwork. I know it's not the greatest artwork ever, but it almost fits with, you know, most D&D campaigns being very fantasy orientated. This looks like some sort of drawing that one of those fantasy characters might come up with, right? Another glamour shot of the figure there. And then on top, we have these really cool red scales with some sparks and ashes floating around with the 50th anniversary kind of logo here. And it looks really cool. But with that being said, that pretty much wraps up the packaging on this classic red dragon. I'm going to take a few minutes to get this bad boy unboxed. Don't go away. There's more miniature review to be had. All right, here is the classic red dragon out of the box, looking pretty cool. I love how he's sitting on this pile of gold coins, you know, playing into the fact that dragons love to hoard treasure. And you can see he's covered in these really prominent spiky scales, and that detail is throughout the entirety of the dragon. He does have these really cool wings, and I just love how that gold looks. And even like the scales and the scoots on the belly, they're not just like this mustard yellow color. They do have some shading to them. The same with the scales on the body. There's like almost like a darker, like very pale wash added to it to bring some more texture to it. But you can see the eyes there look really cool. The fangs, the way they're kind of jutting out the front of the mouth, make it look pretty ferocious and almost sort of demonic in a way. He's got these weird kind of whiskers here on the chin. He's got some blue membrane here. And then you flip it over, you can see it says 50th, and then Red Dragon Draco Conflagrato Horribilis 1E, which I think stands for first edition. But this is not bad for a vintage first edition red dragon. I guess we'll compare it to the other smaller dragon pre-painted mini that I reviewed, which is the Spider Dragon. And I think the Spider Dragon is slightly bigger than this vintage red dragon, but not by much. And I think he gets the extra height because he's on like a stand that kind of props him up, right? But as you can see, like for the two pre-painted dragons that I've reviewed, you know, I actually prefer the red dragon. I know that this spider dragon has more detail and texture to it, being a more modern dragon miniature. But this is based off of the first edition art of the Red Dragon, I believe, from the Monster Manual, and I think it just looks way better than this dragon here. But I really do love this thing. I think it's absolutely awesome, and I just think it's so cool that Wizards of the Coast brought out this vintage classic Red Dragon miniature to celebrate the 50th anniversary. I think that's just a cool thing to put out for the anniversary of a game that's been around for 50 years. You know, people have been enjoying Dungeons and Dragons for many, many years, and we have this awesome vintage classic Red Dragon miniature to celebrate that fact. Anyway, I'm going to go into some size comparisons here with some other dragons that I have in the collection. First step for comparison, we have the classic Red Dragon pre-painted miniature next to the premium Dragonborn Paladin pre-painted miniature. And you can see that this dragon is not very big. Obviously, it's big enough to create a problem for maybe like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 playered characters at the most. But if you have a huge party of characters, I don't think he's going to be too bad of a monster to take down. He might put up a little bit of a fight, but if you have a stacked adventuring party, this guy's probably going to be going down to the ground pretty fast. But you can see him compared to a humanoid player piece, so he's not the biggest of dragons. Next up for comparison, here is the classic Red Dragon next to the pre-painted Spider Dragon. And you can see the Spider Dragon is a little bit bigger than this classic 50th anniversary Red Dragon, but not by much. And then moving into some miniatures that I have painted, here is my young Emerald Dragon next to the 50th anniversary classic Red Dragon. My young Blue Dragon next to the classic Red Dragon. My Dragone next to the classic Red Dragon. And finally, my Gloomstalker next to the classic Red Dragon. All things considered, I think this is one of the cooler small dragon miniatures out there, right? Of course, you can pay for one of the big, cool, scary, pre-painted dragon miniatures, but when it comes to a more small, medium-sized dragon miniature that's pre-painted and affordable, I think this is definitely a really cool dragon. I think this is awesome. I absolutely love this thing, and yeah, it may not be the most realistic compared to modern-day dragons, but it's not really meant to be. It is meant to be a fun little piece that brings us back to the early days of Dungeons & Dragons with their early design of the Red Dragon, and it does really good at bringing that to life. I absolutely love this vintage classic Red Dragon. I think it's one of the cooler miniatures out there that I've seen that's pre-painted, and if you can find this at your local comic book or collectible shop, I would definitely grab this guy because he is pretty cool and he's not too expensive. I think he retails for $40, which is definitely a hell of a lot cheaper than the $140 you'd pay for a full-size pre-painted dragon miniature. But with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Do take care, have a great night, and I'll see you in the next video.